Hi everyone, delonewolf here. Welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. And despite the fact that we don't see big movements in the ticker below, it's actually been a pretty interesting week so far because of EVE Vegas, of course, with all the announcements about the super carrier and carrier, capital and super capital changes. And of course the citadels, where we had a lot of details about what they had in mind when it comes to the production of the citadels. So let's sit down here and let's get started on this week's look at the market. As always, I will start with plex. That's going to be 40 seconds then. And plex are down a little bit, up to 1.174 billion, something like that. Pretty decent margin actually, 16 million between the sellers and the buyers. It's a little higher than usual. The price is pretty high as well, of course, so could be that it's pretty much normal. If we take a look here at the graph, we can see that plex are a little bit under pressure, but I think everyone knows that this is due to the Crimson Harvest, where CCP is holding a pretty long sale for plex. And I've also read on Reddit that there's actually a special sale for Aurum as well going on at Amazon. And so all of this is a little bit under pressure, but despite that we do see that it's not a complete breakdown of the price of plex either. So we're staying well above 1.15 billion for now. We'll have to see what will happen after the sale ends next week. I think that's going to be a pretty good indication about where plex is actually going to be going in the foreseeable future and in the run-up to the expansion. I think that's actually going to be a pretty major thing. The expansion is usually something that causes the price of plexes to rise because people come back to the game but actually want to plex their accounts just to be able to check it out for a month. A lot of people prepare for that, speculate on that, and of course there's the possibility of the double whammy, because at EVE Vegas CCP Seagull said that she was a big proponent, so really in favor of the ability to trade skill points. As I've said, I don't have anything inherently against it. I worry a little bit on the longer term impact of such a change on the game, but I think it makes it pretty likely that we'll see a system like that, maybe not specifically as what was mentioned in the dev blog, but something to do around buying an item from CCP that allows you to trade skill points that you've traded before. I think it's definitely in the cards, and that's just going to put more pressure on the price of plex, since you'll have to spend some real money to actually create the item that does that. So keep those two in mind. I think we're up for a pretty interesting next couple of weeks to get a feeling of where plex will be going in the run-up to the expansion. Of course, we'll take a look at the multiple pilot trading certificate, pretty much mirroring what plex has been doing, just a little bit of a sharper fall off below 1.15 billion and just holding on there then, but you can see the very strong correlation between plex and the multiple pilot trading certificate. Here we've got a pilot resculpt. This spike can be said to be in line with plex as well, so moving up together with plex and then coming back down towards a similar price point as before that. But it's really, I do still, well actually if you look at both of these charts, they are decently similar, except that the increase in price here has been much more timid for the body resculpt. But I'm starting to see a little bit of more correlation between these two, although on a week-to-week basis we've seen very often that the body resculpt really has been doing its own thing. So I'll keep a close eye on that. If plex really starts to rise and this goes up with that, then there could be a stronger correlation than what I've thought there was for a while now. So yeah, that's it with plex. I think there's not much to say because there's a sale going on. It's a little bit under pressure, but it's going to be interesting once the sale ends to see what's going to happen or what's likely to happen between now and the expansion. Next up, we've got some minerals, and that's at 430. Let's start with titanium, which I think is settling down at this point. It's the third week in a row where it's at 6.11 and there's basically no movement. on a week-to-week basis here. You can also see that around 6.10 is where the chart is trying to hold on. Let's take a look here. 609, 602 for the buyers, so just above 6 ISK, and there's still a big order of 2 billion units coming in. Then 611 for the buyers, and here we do have 380, 100, 600 million here, all of that within like 0.10 ISK from each other. I think we're in for like a sideways movement. This big order puts a decent floor, I think, for titanium for now, so it's very unlikely to drop below 6 ISK at this point. But there's decent supply coming in as well, so 6.10, something around there. I think we'll start seeing a sideways movement for titanium now. Next up here we've got pyrite. Is it doing the same? Looks like a bit more of a violent chart, but 11.2 to 11.4. I would say we could be in for a movement here. Let's take a look. 11.02 for the buyers. There's 450 million being bought at 11, like less than an hour ago, so there's definitely still decent demand. Supply, pretty much all of this is less than a day old, except for the two bottom orders, so we're still talking 180, 163, 180 million here, another 60 million here. Although they are in smaller numbers, it's a decent amount of orders as well, so I would say yes, we have a chance that this will continue to narrow in range. And that pyrite will start to find its price probably around the 11.2. I think that's possible considering buy orders are just above 11. So 11 to 11.4 I think is definitely in the cards. 11.2 as an average I think is possible. Next up we've got, where is it here? Mexalon. Again, you know, it was pretty violent run up to 70, so a bit of a correction below 65. But are we finding our price here? 62.07 for, man, and that's one order that keeps being out of line for all of these minerals in the system. But okay, so 62.07 for the buyers, 63.20 for the sellers. Again, very small margin when it comes to the demand here. Pretty robust, 130 million, 158 million. I think those are people that are prepping for some citadels, to be honest. You don't see anything as big for the sellers, but keep in mind, again here pretty much all of this is less than a day old, so at some point there's bound to be people that will actually sell decent numbers, and so we were talking 62, so a 60 to 65 price band for Mexalon. I think it's in the cards. I think decent stability is a possibility. Next up here we've got Isogen, again a run up, crossing 125, you know, 128, something like that. Then a correction back down to 115, not insignificant. It could still have momentum. We'll have to see at some of the detail numbers for that. 111 for the buyers, 116 for the sellers. That's an okay margin. What we're not seeing here is that really big demand. So, well, at above 111, you still have decent 5 million here, 8 million here, 2 million here, but you still have sellers that are going for 14 million, 15 million. So I would say that Isogen is still under pressure a little bit, and we're actually pretty likely to maybe have like a bottom at 110 or something like that. I think that's still in the cards because there's still some oversupply pressure. Considering these numbers, a lot of these are still less than a day old. The margin is only 5, but I think that we could 111 for the buyers. They could have to go as low as 110 before we actually start to see some stabilization here. So I think for the Isaac minerals, we could be in for stable price in the foreseeable future. Could just be that Isogen is gonna correct a little bit lower, especially on the chart here. Next up, the in-between one here is Noxium, again coming back down from trying to reach 500, but that one is still under pressure. I think it's under pressure from overproduction in nullsec and still decent production and supply from Isaac as well. Basically a double whammy. Buyers are as low as 455, sellers 491. It's actually a decent margin of around 10% or a little bit more than that even if you start off at the buy price. And For the numbers, not that much new. Well, there's decent here, 3 million, 4 million, 4 million. That's definitely putting some pressure on here. Buyers, you've got one of 5 million here, one of 13 million here. That's been there for quite a while already. So yeah, I would say Noxium still under pressure, and it's probably going to keep moving at this price range of around 480 on average, maybe something like that. It's really pretty low actually historically for Noxium, but keep in mind it could be due to the fundamentals after the mineral changes. They could be overproduced both in HiSec and in nullsec at the moment, putting all the pressure here. Of course, if anything would ever change when it comes to Noxium, it is extremely low. Having some stocks of these could be a good investment medium term, although again it would mean that it's likely CCP would have to step in and actually change something once again. Like maybe make some of those new capital components for citadels require a lot of Noxium. That's something they could do if they want to see Noxium go a bit higher, for instance. But we can't know that in advance. Next up here we've got the nullsec ones here. Hydrine still dropping below 1050 at the moment, so that still has some momentum. Let's take a look at supply demand here. 1 million coming in, 3 million, that's more than a day old, but it's still there. Then here we've got 3 million, but that's more than 2 days old. So there is, despite the fact that buyers are at 1,000, sellers are below 1050, there is still a little bit of pressure to be seen. I would not be surprised that at some point we'll actually cross the 1,000 mark. On this chart, I'm amazed by the serious correction of almost 500 ISK here that we've already crossed back after the violent upswing of the nullsec minerals here. So the overproduction in nullsec really seems to be a thing though. Next up here we've got Megasite, a little bit more timid. I think that Megasite may find its floor at 1300 here. Let's take a look at some supply demand numbers. Yeah, the demand here, a million, and here again 2 million down here, just a few hours old. So there is decent demand. If you look at the supply numbers, 2 million, 1 million here, couple of a million here as well. It feels like Megasite might indeed be landing here at around 1300 with buyers just below that, sellers a little bit above that. So I expect that Megasite could start bumping off of the 1300 price range here for the foreseeable future. So the only ones that are still under pressure, I would say, are Zydrine, Noxium. Unfortunately, I still see pressure there, and then Pyrite. All the other ones seem to be ready to start to move sideways in a more stable fashion, and of course that means that it's only a matter of time before I think Pyrite and Zydrine find their bottoms as well. And for Noxium, it's just that little bump here that's got to be ironed out, and then we'll probably move just above 450 or something like that for Noxium. Interesting mineral market. I would have expected a bit more upwards pressure due to the Citadel announcements, but I guess that a lot of people have already been incalculating that. And if you look at, for instance, the run-up in Tritanium that we've seen here, all of that could be in calculations for the Citadel releases as well. And keep in mind, there's still several months, which means that there's still plenty of time to make the stocks, to build those up, but at a steady pace. That's not gonna spook the market either. Okay, moving on to the Tech 1 market then, around 13 minutes. Let's see if there's some impacts to be noted here. Yeah, Armageddon climbing up to 208 million. I would say 200 million for a battleship is not out of line, but this is a little bit of a sustained high for Armageddon. Will we see a pushback? I think we will start to see that 72, 94 Armageddons coming in here as the latest orders. They're starting to see this opportunity, starting to bring Armageddons to the market. I think we won't go that much higher on the chart anymore, and we could start correcting because that's 161. That's good for 3 days or even 4 days supply of Armageddons that have just been brought to the market. So anyone else that's producing them is going to start competing for this price, and is probably going to start moving the Armageddon down here. Next up, we've got the Caracal finally also coming back down towards 11.5 ISK, which I think is normal for a Caracal. You see the big numbers here, 204, 37, 59. That is trying to take advantage of the opportunity, close to 12.5 million. But at some point, of course, we will start to normalize. Next up here, we've got the Dominics moving back up to 198. So I think that some Dominic's production may be moving to Armageddon production, considering you get a better price there. That means that the Dominic's will start to move up a little bit. This is more normal, you know, this is a normal situation for a Tech 1 ship. With older orders that are still hanging around, that will cause some stability. Then you've got new orders that try to take advantage. This is now slowly starting to dry up, and it's moving to a better place where we'll end up with the Dominic's probably around 200 million, which is normal for a battleship. Next up, we've got the Drake here, finally finding some stability as well at around 56 million. What are the supply demand numbers looking like? Quite okay. Even a lot of them still coming in, 19, 30 here, 30 there, all of that less than a day old. It could even end up putting a little bit of pressure on the Drake, causing it to correct back down a little bit, maybe towards 55, 54 million on average. I think that's definitely in the cards here. Next up, we've got the Mauler. After the spike comes the correction, as tends to happen pretty quickly in the Tech 1 market. So less than a day old, starting here. Well, not that much, but you could have seen that 2 days ago you've got 40 of them, 93 of them coming in, 13 here. You still have 24 of them. So this will be going back down and settling in the end, probably close to 11 to 12 million, where we actually started this bump off. So just be a little patient and actually think that this will settle down quite nicely. Next up here we've got the Myrmidon. After two violent spikes up to 58 and 60 million, we're now coming back down here, dipping below 56 million. And the supply numbers, it's starting to look a little bit normal again here, with stocks of Myrmidons at prices that escalate at like 59 million, 58 million, 57 million, 57 million, and then slowly going back down with anything new that's being produced here. The latest 9 here, again cutting it down a little bit. So the pressure is on here for the Myrmidon, but we're also coming in the 54 to 55 to 56 million range, which is pretty normal for the Myrmidon as well. So yeah, let's hope that with minerals finding some stability, that Tech 1 ships will find that as well. After that event around a month ago, where a lot of them were completely bought out from the JITA market, causing, for instance, this price spike here in the Oracle. There's still some hesitation, but let's see, the Oracle was still empty last week. That's better. That's better. Look at that. All of this less than a day old. A lot of competition coming back to the Oracle production. This is going to put some pressure on the price, and I would not be surprised if you'll actually settle at like 85 or maybe a little bit lower than that even. Just, it takes a little bit of time because it was a major jolt to the market that happened about a month ago. But it's starting to settle down a little bit. Here is the Raven that went up as high as 205, now correcting back to 195. Decent numbers coming in here again as well over the last week and the last few days. So this is looking quite okay for the Raven. I would say it would not be out of line if it would actually start to move around the 195 to 200 price band, because it's still a battleship. That just puts it in line with the Dominic's, Armageddon, and some of the other ones. Maybe it's a little less popular, that's why it's going just a little bit below that. But it started off at like 180, and even below that, 175. You can see some data points there. That's extremely low for a battleship. So I think this is actually just a healthy bringing the Raven in line with the other battleships. Next up here we've got the Stabber. Again, nice jolt up. Then you have the correction that tried to come back towards 11 million. A bit of hesitation. Let's see if it's been bought out. No, now the supply is coming back in here again with 35 of them here. Then another 13 here. So we won't see as high of a spike. It tries to go back to 12 million, but it's going to come back down here. And I fully expect it to settle back around 10.5 to 11 million in a few weeks, especially with stable mineral prices. Here we get the Tornado next. Again, that event here around early October, but then it's settling back down, trying to reach 74 again, taking off again, but finally we start to see ships coming back. Look at how much is less than a day old. And even the latest one are still at 32, 92 and 36. It could be that the players that have made their big moves here in October are also starting to dump their stocks here, and that's why we're actually seeing some corrections. Next up, the Typhoon. This may seem like something completely different, but keep in mind where Typhoon is coming from. 174 million with a low of almost 170 for a battleship. It's definitely not a lot. So it moved up to 196, which I think is still not out of line for the battleship, and now it's actually going to come back down a little bit. There's still not that much supply for Typhoon, so if you calculate it on a perfect BPO, I think the Typhoon could still yield you a decent amount of money, a decent value for the minerals invested, but I actually feel that the Armageddon is probably gonna still be a better proposition, and so I think that the Typhoon may actually end up settling a little bit higher than 174 where it started at. 190, maybe something like that, I think is in the cards, making it less popular than the Dominics, the Armageddon, which are really good with sentries, etc. Although the Typhoon can do that as well. But yeah, just a little less popular, so a little below 200 million, but not 25 million below that, which is more than a 10% cut on another battleship. I don't think that was too realistic, and that the Typhoon has been languishing around this price band for a little bit too long. So I actually think that this is healthy for the Typhoon in general. And then finally we've got the Vexor, 12 million for that, also coming down of a high of 13 million. Will it settle below 12 million? I think it could. Yeah, just look at the supply numbers here: 39, 64, 328, 43 here again, 50 again, all of this less than a day old. That pressure is on, and the Vexor is definitely going to settle back down closer to 11.5, maybe even in this price band, which it's been in the last 6 months or so. So the stabilization, it's finally coming after the big shock of around a month ago. The gaps are being plugged, the high prices, people are producing those ships, bring them to the market, and you don't see that many completely empty sell order charts here anymore. It's looking like finally the Tech 1 market has absorbed what happened and is going to come back together with the minerals for a more stable period, which I think is pretty good in my opinion. Next up we've got some Tech 2 stuff, 2110 for that. Let's see if we can find some opportunities. Here is the Basilisk dropping towards 180 on the chart. Could start to be interesting. What are the buyers at? 178. Yeah, you can buy them below 180. I mean, the trigger 175 is still not exactly there, but considering the entire 6-month chart, a few buy orders I think could be decent investments at this point. Next up here we get the Cerberus bouncing off of 180, a little bit as expected. I said last week the Cerberus looks pretty good. It's already being sold now for 194. 195 for the 195 for the first big order. Buyers are still at 180. So if you can still pick one up, you're a little bit too late to buy them below 180, so be careful there. But it's already, I mean, you've probably been able to buy them for 179 or something like that. You can sell them for 194, and this is not even a noticeable spike just yet. So if there's another big buyer that comes in for Cerberus, we could be off to the races. We could be going a lot higher all of a sudden. But I would say it's unfortunately too late. Last week was when you could have put up your buy order and picked some Cerberus up well below 180. It's probably too late by now. Next up here we've got the Enio. After that dip and that jump up, it's just basically normalizing in the 22 to 23 million range. So I don't think that it's too good to be investing in that. You've got 21 million pretty much for the buyers, 23 for the sellers, which is like less than 10%. And then you've got the big numbers here with 26 being sold, 12 being sold here. The buyers, there's still 20 and 25 as well. You're very unlikely to actually see a major jump in these assault frigates at the moment, I think. So next up here we got the Guardian touching 130 on the chart. Starts to be interesting. Buy orders at 126 starts to be interesting as well. You still have decent supply as well at 136. There is still a little bit of room, I think, to go maybe just a touch lower. But this, just like the Basilisk, is starting to come into interesting investment territory, in my opinion. Next up here we've got the Hound bumping off of 17 million. So 17,159 for the buyers. 20 million for the 19 million for the sellers. Pretty timid jump up in price here, although it is more than 10%. Some money could have been made here, but it is being snuffed out pretty early on, I think, with still 30 of them coming in here, 10, 14. Yeah, it will not jump up to like 20, 21 million. This time probably too late to invest as well in the hounds. So you could have made a little bit of profit on this trade, but not as much as I would like to see. Next up here, we've got the Ishtar. That's pretty decent, 180 dropping down to 160, now working its way back up. What are the sellers at? 167. Buyers are still below 160, which is okay, I think, for an Ishtar considering the entire chart, although the trigger seems to be closer to 165 for some volatility, 155 for some volatility. So yeah, as you can see right here, you can it drops off from 158 to 155. So if you want to wait, you could wait for these buyers to disappear. I think it could be, there's still decent supply. And then if you can buy close to 155, you're definitely having a good deal here. Could already be okay. It could be a little bit too early as well. Next up here, we've got the Manticore slowly going to a low point for 6 months. What are the buyers at? The buyers, there's not that many of them. You're close to 19 million. There's still decent supply, so still decent pressure. But at some point, this will probably be triggered again for a nice spike of maybe 2, 4, 5 million, something like that. It is possible. And at the moment, you could position yourself in the Manticore, although it would of course be nicer if we could actually buy them below 19 million. For that, there's still around 100 of them that need to be bought, which is maybe a day, maybe 1 or 2 days. It's one that you can keep an eye on. It's already okay, I think, to make a move on this medium to longer term because of the amount of supply that's still here. But you can also wait a little bit and maybe try to snag some up closer to 18 million, which would be pretty good, I think. Next up here, we've got the Nemesis. If I've not noticed that one, I think I must have really been asleep last week. But yeah, dipping down below here with some severe volatility as low as 17.5. Yeah, that volatility, I definitely noticed it. So the Nemesis looked really interesting, and here's the jump back up already towards 19 million. So that is from 17.5, maybe, 17.5 to 19 million, almost 10%. But the buy opportunity is over. Let's see if this has some legs and could go a little bit higher. There's decent supply here though, that's gonna stop it, but 19.5 million here, buying at 17.5 is 2 million, way more than 10% if you consider the buy price. So it was an opportunity right here. It was just a very short opportunity because of the volatility. But that's what we want to see in the Take-Two market, of course. It's some pretty volatile charts. So the Nemesis, you probably had maybe a few days to make a move on that, to buy them close to 17.5, maybe even below 17 on the buyers. I'm not sure anymore. And now you've got the opportunity to sell them close to 19.5 million, I think, in the upcoming days. So that was a good opportunity, which unfortunately is over already. Next up here, we've got the Oneros bumping off of 145. I don't like this. It's now at 160 on the chart, which is right in the middle of the entire 6-month chart. The bottoms are as low as 135, 140. We did not reach that. We didn't even come close. So yeah, the Oneros not looking too hot at the moment. It's just a little bit too much middle of the road, considering the rest of the chart. Next up here, we get the Purifier also going towards a low of 6 months here. Let's see what the buyers are at. 16 million. Yeah, people are trying to snag these up, of course, at 16.3 million. It's your choice. Again, with all the stealth bombers, you still see decent supply coming in here. But I think longer term, this could be a good investment to buy them below 16.5 million. Considering here, buy sell opportunity at 26. You've got sell opportunities at 20 here as well. I think this could be okay. Just not on a short-term trade. You need to wait that volatile move up in stealth bombers if you're actually making a move at this point. But I think you could be okay with this. Next up here, we've got the Scimitar and bouncing off of 130. Could be expected, but again, I would like to see it lower than that. 125, 120 should have been in the cards, but it hasn't happened. So yeah, unfortunately, Scimitar, again, we're a little bit too late for either side of the trades, I think. Next up here, we've got the Vengeance, starting at 19 up to 22, correcting back to 19. This is okay. It gives me a little bit of hope for the assault frigates, at least for the Vengeance here. But unfortunately, what could happen here, 18 to 20 million, it's a decent margin, but what could start to happen is that the chart could actually start to narrow down around the 20 million mark. And if that happens, then I'm definitely gonna have to just remove the assault frigates because they show too much stability. They show too timid a price range for me to actually consider that trade worthy. You're much better off, I think, with slightly bigger ships. Maybe I should bring some command ships back or something like that. Maybe some of the new Tech 2 destroyers could become interesting as well. Are they Tech 2 destroyers or are they... Well, some of the new ships could become interesting, but yeah, the assault frigates, they're not showing what I want to see when it comes to actively trading these, unfortunately. All right, let's move on to the Tech 3 market then. 29.45 for those. And I think I'll start with the Tengu here. You can see after a nice jump up to 200 million, the pressure will be on here. We're dropping towards 170 here, 175 for the sellers, 170 for the buyers, and supply. Well, all of this is pretty much, again, all of this is less than a day old. What is different compared to like 6 months ago or a year ago is the numbers here. We would have seen probably 10 times as many Tengus being brought to the market, and the reason we're not seeing that is of course these tactical destroyers that are now being produced with the same materials and the same effort as those cruisers. So basically this is why we're actually seeing more volatility, slightly higher prices for Tech 3 cruisers, and I think that's good news for the Tech 3 market and people producing that. There's more opportunity to make some money in this compared to the very low prices that we had for cruisers for a very long time. So yeah, the Tengu now, after a bump up to 200 million, it's normal that it's under pressure. We're still seeing decent supply. Where will it settle down? Very likely that it could cross 160, and then we could be off to the races again if we ever cross 150 again. But at the moment, I would say, yeah, the Tengu could lose a little bit more with decent supply still coming in every single day apparently. Next up here we'll have the Proteus. Let's take a look at that. Very similar bump up to 220, moving back down to 170 as well. Are we still seeing decent supply? All of this is less than a day old, so that's not bad, and you still have 10 and 11 of them coming in as well. So it looks like the pressure is on for the at the moment for Proteus and the Tengu. Let's take a look at the Loki. Pretty similar, also coming towards 170, where you still have 10 and 11 of them coming in. Again, all of this is less than a day old, so the Loki has a little bit more pressure, heading towards 170. I think all of them seem to be around that ballpark. Here's the Legion then. That one actually tumbled right back down towards 160. So quite a bit of pressure. Are we seeing more Lokis on the market here? Yeah, you definitely have these 40 here. That must have been a pretty big order. All of the above that is less than a day old. 10, 10, 9 here. So I would not be surprised to see the other ones, considering all of the new supply here, move towards the Legion price range 160 to 170, and then yeah, depending on the momentum, settling as low as 150 and then coming back a little bit when the destroyers actually become more profitable to produce than the cruisers. But all of them seem to have a little bit of momentum going down at the moment. So let's take a look at the destroyers then. Here's the Confessor, settling pretty nicely at 54 million. Supply numbers still look pretty healthy, but yeah, it is a destroyer. These are used and lost quite a bit more often. So 19, 37, 35, 38. It does look like we'll settle just below 155 for these. Next up here we've got the Hecate, also settling just below 55, the 50 to 55 price range. Supply wise, well, it's pretty decent, but less than a day old. You've got this one order of 23. So I actually think that the Hecate could move up to 55, 54, something like that, and could be interesting if it has, if this actually gets bought out, someone sees this opportunity, then we could actually violently go through the roof on that one, just as what we've seen on the Tengu here, for instance. And then we could be off to more volatility. This could become a trigger, the fact that there are not that many Hecates on the market at the moment, and that they're only at 52 million, which is less than the Confessor, for instance. So keep an eye on that one. It could be an interesting one, maybe to produce, to try and stop the volatility, or to notice the opportunity and then make the right moves. Next up here we've got the Jackdaw clearly stabilizing at 50 million. Supply numbers are still a bit more healthy than the other ones, although we don't see any new orders. So all of the production, this is the effect that you can see here, has moved away from the Jackdaw and moved into the Tech 3 cruisers, which were a great opportunity at the time. And this is why you're not seeing any new orders here. The price is still managing to be stable. I guess they still had quite a few to get through. At the moment, the Confessor is still higher than the other ones, and supply is starting to mobilize for that one. But yeah, the other ones, something could happen to these, honestly, especially the Hecate. And then finally we've got this Vapel, which is settling at 60 million almost. Yeah, 58 million, something like that. Supply should be plentiful here, and it is more than a front page of less than a day old. 134, 59, 60, 59. So I would say, yeah, be on the lookout for some volatility in the Jackdaw and in the Hecate. And here, those are the two that are not showing any of the supply at the moment. Those are the gaps that could be filled if something actually happens to them. All of the other ones, especially the cruisers, are under pressure at the moment, coming off of that big spike here. And well, maybe some volatility in the Hecate and the Jackdaw could be the trigger to also settle down for the cruisers as supply start to drop on them and start to move towards that better opportunity. But yeah, the Tech 3 market is definitely much more alive than a year ago, and that makes it much more interesting, providing opportunities for people to actually make some money. Very nice, in my opinion. And then finally, for the extra products, 35 to 45. I'm actually going to cover two of them. First of all, I'll quickly check on the fuel because the fuel knew a little bit of volatility all of a sudden with the Citadel announcement that has spiked up here, but it's all settling down pretty quickly already as well. So the MR fuel block though, yeah, clearly up from 16.5 to 17 to 17.5, but that's not that big of a move anymore, so that's actually okay. But this spike here is due to the announcement of the Citadels and that new type of fuel block. Next up here we've got the Caldari one, much more timid jump up here, already settling back down towards 18.5k. But the Galente one, this one is what I noticed actually made a pretty big move, starting at 17 up to 18.5k, but settling at 17.5. And then here we get the Minmatar one, again slight bump up here to 17.5, but slowly settling down. So it looks like the volatility that was triggered by the new fuel block announcement and what it would cost, it had a little bit of an impact on the fuel blocks, but all of that was due to speculation because all of them have actually settled back down here. And so it shows that yeah, being patient in this case paid off, because I saw in Amar, I saw the Galente fuel blocks which I needed for the boss jump up to 22,000 ISK. I said no, that just feels a little bit wrong, and then just a few days later I could buy them back for 18, something like that, which was the normal price. So that volatility was all due to speculation, and a lot of people will actually have lost money speculating that it would keep going higher and higher, and so now they're cutting their losses. And the fuel blocks are actually settling down just a little bit higher after the announcement of those new fuel blocks, but it's nothing too drastic. It is actually something that does not mean that you won't be able to fuel your boss anymore. It's actually all of a sudden going to start costing 20% more or anything like that. It's nowhere close to that. It's actually a pretty timid response, and I did see like over speculation in the Galente fuel blocks last week. But for me, pretty happy that it all settled back down. I managed to buy my fuel blocks at a more than reasonable price once again. And then finally, we're also going to check on the Gecko, because that one took a major hit with the capital changes. So you can see it right here. Gecko, that moved up pretty violently up to 120 million, dropped back down as low as 80 million. So that's a drop of 1/3 of the price, not insignificant. And this of course due to the announcement that carriers will no longer be able to use drones. I guess Geckos and carriers make for a really good ratting combination. The real question, of course, is going to be, does that mean that Gecko is a really good investment at the moment? And the gamble you're taking then is, will CCP ever come out with new geckos? If they don't, then this could be a really good gamble that in the longer term is only going to pay off more and more, because geckos are going to keep increasing in value as they're lost, and it's not just carriers that use them. You've got battleships that use them as well, especially something like the Rattlesnake has a good use for a couple of geckos. So yeah, the Gecko, really interesting, went as high as 120 extremely violently, but the carrier announcement really killed them off, losing a third of their value all of a sudden. So people that still made their moves above 100 million here, they're sitting with pretty expensive geckos in the cargo hold at the moment, and the question does become around 80 million here. Are we going to start the rise once again, or will CCP at some point decide, okay, like Christmas gift, everyone gets another Gecko blueprint copy or something like that? That could happen as well, and it is the gamble you take if you choose to invest your ISK into geckos for the longer term. So yeah, that's for your consideration, but the volatility here was quite noticeable, whereas the Gecko has been moving up, just up and up for almost an entire year, starting below 30 million, going up to 120. Now there was a really big pushback, and a major trigger on that will also have been the announcement that the carriers will no longer be able to use drones with the Citadel expansion. So it's all up to you guys. I'm not going to pronounce myself either way. I just want to let you know the gamble you take at the moment is that geckos will no longer be reintroduced into the game. It's possible that you're right, it's possible that you're wrong. You never know in advance. It makes it an interesting gamble for sure, because if you'd made your move a year ago, of course you're still sitting pretty golden with something that has more than doubled in value. If you unloaded at 120 or above 100 million, yeah, tripling your price pretty easily, that would have been absolutely golden. The question is, can you gamble that that's going to happen again in the next 6 months, in the next year, or could you end up with worthless geckos? Nobody knows in advance, so I would say make your bets and let me know. For now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.